Hello everyone, welcome back my little ducklings. We are back with Ambre, a heartbreaking kinetic novel. So last time, let's just be real, last time this little girl who may or may not be a little girl had sex with Tristan, who may or may not be her husband, who knows. I don't know if this is pedophilic or not, but we've already come this far, so let's just keep going, I guess. So we'll pick up where we left off. When dawn's rays of light crept through the window, Ombre was deep asleep, lying atop Tristan's still lukewarm body. As I said last time they had sex, or heavily hinted that they had sex, I should say. Yeah. Eyes surrounded by dark circles, the weight of regrets, a fatigue he couldn't get rid of, he stared at her with a sad smile on his face. It was just a dream, wasn't it? When you'll wake up, you'll be a child again, right? Yep. Okay, so I guess I was right. I think. The only answer he got was a light groan, softened by such a serene face, he left a kiss on her fresh cheeks. As soon as he did, the sleeping lips spread to form a happy smile. I wonder what you're dreaming about. Say, won't you invite me over there? Okay. From that strange night on, in a paroxysm of lies. Alright, everyone, you know my rule of thumb. I see a word I don't know, so Google tells me because, yeah. So paroxysm is a sudden attack or violent expression of a particular emotion or activity. A paroxysm of weeping. I don't know how to pronounce that. Paroxysm. According to Google, it's paroxysm, okay? From that strange night on, in a paroxysm of lies, Embry got Tristan to agree to become a more or less official couple. Thus she demanded an engagement ring and did not hesitate to walk the streets locked to his arm. Soon it wasn't enough for her anymore. Eager, ferocious, even, she wouldn't merely settle for the girlfriend status. She needed more. She needed to surpass the woman who preceded her, which I think is her, but okay. Her invisible rival, whose shadow was always looming like a... I swear, y'all, I'm a good reader. I am, but these are words that I don't see on the everyday. A flatterer. Oh, yeah. So a domiciles is a flatterer who, having extolled the happiness of Dionysus, which was the Greek god of, partying and booze and liquor and all that stuff. I actually remember that from school. Was seated at a banquet with a sword suspended over his head by a single hair to show him the perilous nature of that happiness. So it's an idiom. Okay, got it. So it's kind of like you can enjoy this for now, but I want you to know how fleeting it is kind of thing. Okay. Looming like my man D's sword. So she dragged Tristan to wedding shops while dreaming of a perfect ceremony of her big day. The magazines, the advertisements, the television, the whole world was yelling at her that was what happiness was, so wasn't it only natural for her to embrace it to the fullest? Wasn't it every little girl's dream? Marriage was promised and sold like a real-life fairy tale application. There was a few expensive, beautiful dress, a princess dress. The bride had to be the story's heroine, and everyone only had eyes for her. And then she would have at her service all the cosmetic and superficial accessories in which the stars constantly bathed. Famous singers all lived in some sort of permanent wedding, a strange and unlikely fantasy. Ambry too wanted to taste this heaven the world was constantly singing the praises of. So she pushed Tristan to please her. He proposed to her, and both of them organized the ceremony with great pomp. Oh, she's so cute. But, again, I'm going to think of her as a grown woman because, yeah. On that day, oh, I got the Cinderella Syndrome achievement. Cool. On that day, Ambry, still so frail, seemed to shine more brightly than ever. On that day, Ambry thought she had finally erased all traces of her rival. But it still wasn't enough. The life she was living didn't seem perfect enough just yet. She still needed something else to be entirely fulfilled. She wished to start a family. After all, the world had sold marriage to her as a never-ending fairy tale, but she still needed a goal to keep on living. And it was said that her biological role, her natural role, was of course to procreate. True women should obviously yearn for becoming mothers, an unchanging law that was probably written somewhere in a fragment of DNA code. Okay, so this is cool. I do agree with her with the idea of it is mainstream and expected for women to procreate. I mean, I'm from the South, which of course means that I go to family reunions and cousins several years younger than me are already on their second or third kid, even though I have none yet. So I understand the idea of you're supposed to be a mother by a certain point, and you're supposed to want to be a mother by a certain point, even if I don't necessarily agree with it. So yeah. A true woman had the duty of having a child, preferably a girl, so that she could educate her with the same moral codes she had received. Her living doll to play with, brush her hair, play tea time with. This is getting scary. You lost me at little girls. Little girls are terrifying. Nah, I'm okay. You ought to busy yourself with something. Fill your existence or assess some kind of eternal fantasy, one or the other. A desire, a project as a couple, or just an implicate order that came deep within your entrails. Ambry had read and seen everywhere that those who didn't want kids were automatically unhappy without realizing it, immature, almost disabled by selfishness or neurosis. Oh no. Oh no. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But unfortunately, I sometimes am really good at guessing endings of things. Is her issue and the reason why Tristan's wife thinks of herself as a little girl because they were unable to have kids, and thus it's a repeating process. She realizes that she's in love with Tristan. They have sex, they get married again and again, and then she's like, okay, well now I have to have kids, and then she can't have kids, so she starts thinking of herself as the little girl that she was supposed to have, that Tristan then kind of raises, sort of, and then, of course, that little girl kind of matures and grows back into his wife, that again marries him, and still can't have kids. Oh, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be right. But it's like disabled by selfishness or neurosis. I think that's the case. True love should bear fruits, just like the princess could only be revealed as such by a prince. That's where Cinderella's myth lay. Ambry didn't know it yet, but the clock had started ticking long ago, and it was dangerously approaching its final moment. Tristan Mallory took rather coldly the eagerness of the young girl to procreate. He did his best to clumsily claim that they had more than enough time, that they would see that later, that he was ready to wait, but she kept insisting more and more. Months went by, and the young girl never got tired of reciting all the things she intended to do with that Providential baby, describing from A to Z how she would dispense their education and the accessories that would be necessary. Her biggest wish to give birth to a little girl she could gussy up as much as she wanted. She was sighing while imagining how she would shower her baby with gifts, how she would go shopping with her and evolve into a kind of cool and friendly big sister-like mother. Scolding? She was way too afraid that her future child would hate her to even think of it. Her angel had to love her. It was obvious. She would be a good mother and everything would go perfectly in the best of all worlds. Ambre spared no argument to convince Tristan. Motherhood became in turn the realization of a little girl's dream, the logical and infallible consequences of a lasting relationship, the greatest proof of love that could ever be, a way to conform to the norm. Months slowly, dreadfully went by to the rhythm of Ambre's growing obsession. She was always eagerly awaiting a sign, watching out her body for the indication of a good news. Try after try, she repeated that this time would be the one. However, she had to face the fact that something was wrong, that something wasn't working. She might well desperately attempt her hardest. She still wasn't pregnant. A shower of doubt started pouring down on her mind. Tristan tried to minimize the problem, assured her that it wasn't a big deal, that it would happen someday, and that they had so many other things to do together, but Ambre wasn't listening anymore. Tristan looks upset. He looks very upset right there. I mean, she does too, but he actually has like the cold, narrow eyes. It's kind of scary. She absolutely wanted to go see a doctor to see her body checked up, to understand the problem and fix it. She wasn't going to give up so close to her goal. Her partner avoided the subject as much as possible, appeared distant, and refused any medical checkup. Because if I'm right, then they've done that before, and that probably starts it. Anyways, every time the young girl approached him to talk, he gritted his teeth, feeling that the solution was becoming more and more tense, or feeling that the situation was becoming more and more tense. She was getting too close to the truth, and he couldn't afford it. There were too many things at stake. So he held on. He tried all he could to reassure his love, to convince her to get rid of those unwanted thoughts. But Tristan's shoulders, yielding under the weight of his burden, was too tired to anticipate Ambre's every move. He didn't see the disaster coming, even though he could have foreseen it. So she went. One day, while he was at work, she took the opportunity to go to a doctor who resided in the city center hospital. She explained the situation and begged for him to help her bear children. He gave a long sigh while staring at her from head to toe, and in an unconscious voice, he kindly whispered to her, "You know, there's no need to try that hard. You'll only hurt yourself further. Don't bury your head in the sand. You're very well aware of your sterility, aren't you?" Yep. It's not the end of the world, you know. There are assisted procreation techniques that work very well nowadays, like in vitro fertilization, for example, and she looks very unhappy. Why don't you try to think about it? The young doctor had tried to be as positive and comforting as he could, but the harm had already been done. Ambre was in shock. Her dreams had just crumbled to pieces in an ocean of dust and litter. She left the hospital completely distraught, speechless, stiff, moving as mechanically as a robot. She heard nothing of the last kind words the doctor pronounced. All she knew was that she had to go home, and I'm saving. In this empty slot, and I'm saving again. And then I'm saving again. And this music is getting kind of spooky. Yeah, that music's spooky. Once outside, the sky's blinding gray light made her lose her bearings. She was in the city where she had always lived, yet the buildings, the cars, the people passed by, they had all turned to ghastly and haggard silhouettes in a dark, upside-down world. Her sight became blurred little by little as she staggered aimlessly. The city crumbled into a gigantic pile of ashes. The voices of the pedestrians around her corrupted into an inaudible language, metallic and meaningless. Ambre managed to reach the park instinctively, not really knowing how. A terrifying dread was seizing her from inside, and at the very beginning, Tristan found her in a park. He's gonna find her again, isn't he? I don't want to cry. Come on, this was supposed to be a cute story. Unable to see, unable to understand anymore, she let herself fall on the grass, pupils wide open. All of a sudden, the gray, filtered images of her past came back to her, and reality brutally hit her in the stomach. It's impossible. Why? Why me? Even though I am normal? I'm not trash. No, it's impossible. My dream, I wanted to be happy. She remembered the mirror, the crude light above the mirror that showed her all her flaws, all her imperfections. The excruciating need to be perfect, to be flawless, flawless like the models, the actors, the singers that were on every screen that were constantly seen. To be seen, to be admired, to have every corner of yourself analyzed. Never relax, be irreproachable, take care of everything, hide everything, keep everything deep inside, even if the fragile surface is going to crack under the weight of lies. The mirror, in front of which she carefully put on makeup for long minutes, that miraculous product that could erase those damned imperfections, those damned traces of humanity. Shave her legs, not leaving a single hair, frame her brows, choosing the best outfit possible to show herself to advantage, add a layer of makeup on her face to make the identity disappear in favor of a single form of beauty, a majestic beauty, an artificial beauty impossible to attain. Nah, baby girl, you don't need none of that. I mean, Tristan loves you. You don't... Can't do nothing. The mirror in front of which she would weigh herself, in front of which she would tell herself that she should be careful of what she eats, become thinner, become more beautiful, more desirable. Throw up the excess, keep only what's essential, admire yourself in front of the mirror. Throw up that unwanted vital pulsation, throw up what's dirty to become cleaner, inside and out. Destroy the dirtiness, everything that is dirty, become pure, immaculate, perfect. The mirror, the eyes of others, that permanent mirror of vanity, believing you exist, destroying yourself bit by bit, becoming unable to survive by yourself, to stand the growing loneliness, the pathetic struggle against your own being. I didn't sign up for this shit. I signed up for something cute and pastel pink and cutesy, and I didn't sign up for this. Mind almighty against the body, forcing it into submission, forcing it to remodel itself to fit your every wish, forcing it to become your soul's one and only avatar. Not being able to accept yourself anymore, the endless, impetuous after time, nature, a constant effort to kill yourself, to prevent yourself from existing. An ethereal body, fantasized, a corpse's body. The mirror is scrutinizing the depths of my heart. It knows everything, it sees everything. I can't escape, I cannot escape. Locked in by her obsessions, Ambre convulsed frantically while letting out piercing shrieks. It has to stop, it has to stop. Suddenly, the emotional pressure became so strong that she completely lost all sense of reality, and her mind cracked up. She didn't move anymore. She no longer pronounced a single word. Motionless on the park's grass, terrified eyes immobile, you could have believed she was dead if she hadn't been breathing frantically. The world seemed to freeze, explode, die in an insufferable shriek of agony. Her world. The clock had struck midnight, but Cinderella wasn't ready to give up on her dream. It was 7:30 p.m. on that beautiful yet cold autumn day. The wind shook the frail trees' branches across the street. Tristan Mallory made his slow, tired way. A whirlwind of leaves caught his attention. He stopped to contemplate them for a few minutes. A spray of colors danced around him, fragments of red, orange, yellow, spread at random, forming a mosaic that stretched on as far as the eye could see. A rush of beauty in that gray and fuming city, in that noisy metropolis that was constantly exhaling pollution. Coming back to his senses, the 30-year-old man shook his head. Now wasn't the time to be daydreaming. He had to go home. Ambre was waiting. As usual, she would probably seek advice about her future pregnancy. She would ask what name they should give their kid and how they should decorate his room. As usual, she'd worry about not seeing her stomach swell. And as usual, he would have to minimize the problem and pretend it was no big deal to delay the unavoidable. The long day already weighed on his shoulders, but if he was completely honest, work wasn't the most tiring thing in his life. After all, an honest, well-paid job was somewhat of a luxury these days. Like any model employee, his conscientiously accomplished, whatever. We all know what's happening. Accomplished the tasks handed to him, no more, no less. No, what was really destroying him was a completely different form of fatigue, an appalling and crushing solitude that had been shadowing him for years, ever since his wife had lost her mind. The light tinkling on the front door opening brought him back to earth. He was already at his flat. Ambre should have been there to greet him with a wide smile. Instead, a sad and silent living room was waiting for him. A shiver traveled down his spine as he entered the room. Where was she? Could it be? Could it be happening again? Oh, baby boy, I'm sorry. I would have prevented it, but I didn't have very many choices for this game. Driven by an almost desperate urge, he didn't even bother hanging up his coat correctly before slamming open all the doors, one after the other, hoping she would only be sleeping in a corner. Each time the same emptiness answered his pleas. He felt a rising dread within. His last hope, the last door, the forbidden room beyond. He opened it slightly and peeked inside. Of course, there was no one inside. That would have been too easy. He fell heavily onto the sofa. The crushing solitude came back in full force, crushing him again and again, wounding his face with invisible cuts, the cuts of time. It was happening again. Ambre had gone crazy again. She had run away once more. And once more he would have to find her before she got hurt. He would have to play the part of a stranger, impassive, reveal nothing of the torment devouring him alive. All of a sudden, Tristan Mallory felt immensely exhausted. He held his head in his hands, staring at the floor for a long time. He needed to calm down even just a little so that he could pretend he wasn't affected by it, even though baby boy is. I'm not gonna cry though. I'm not gonna do it. You're not gonna get me, game. Then after what felt like an eternity, he abruptly got to his feet. He gathered all of the framed pictures that had been on display and stowed them away in a closet. The memories needed to be out of sight. If Ambre discovered the pictures of her happy alter ego too quickly, she was bound to ask questions. This time he had to hide them better than the last cycle. He had to stall for time. He stored them in a drawer and locked it. The frames didn't take up too much space after all. There weren't that many of them. He always put the same ones on the buffet. She never noticed it. When he was sure that there were no more pictures sticking out, Tristan put his coat back on and rushed outside. It was a bit chilly, a bit dark, but there was still enough light to see clearly. It was the ideal time to take a walk, at least that's what he once might have thought. As he hurried along the sidewalk, the 30-year-old man was anything but relaxed. Incredibly nervous, he walked around the places that were most familiar to him, looking for a serenity that seemed to be definitely out of reach. He had to find her. He had to bring her back home. While passing a park near his home, Tristan Mallory suddenly heard a high-pitched, almost inaudible plea. His heart jumped, and he stopped. Round and round like a carousel, achievement unlocked. In the dim light of the setting sun, he made out the silhouette of a little girl sitting on a swing, with her head bowed. Tears were rolling down her cheeks. Afraid of startling her, he approached slowly and took a closer look. He was indeed standing in front of his wife, Ambre Mallory, who used to be so charming. She was still pretty, but seemed to have aged prematurely. White locks here and there brightened up her long hair to the point where you couldn't tell her age anymore. With that appearance, she could have been an old lady, yet she was barely in her 30s, like Tristan, who didn't appear any younger. Back hunched, looking haggard, eyes more lifeless than ever, she was crying. Her clothes were crumpled, she had neither a coat nor a scarf, and she bore several scratches as if she had been in a fight. Had she rolled on the floor again, had she harmed herself, regardless, she had most likely gotten hurt during her runaway. The park was completely deserted, and she seemed to have been there for a while. She must have run away several hours ago, probably in the early afternoon, otherwise she wouldn't have been in a state where she would be able to cry. She would have stayed motionless like a doll, unable to show the slightest sign of life, until finally she'd come back to her senses. For a second, Tristan Mallory felt the temptation to abandon her there, to leave her to her fate, but very quickly he mentally chastised himself. He couldn't do that. She was his wife. He loved her. He had to take care of her, no matter what, but even so, sometimes he almost wished she would get lost for good, that she'd disappear, so he wouldn't have to live through this endless circle again. His conscience protested that he would feel too guilty, that he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. There was no way out. He had to live with this burden. So he placed himself in front of her and asked in a soft voice, "Is something wrong?" At first, his wife seemed not to hear him. She choked on her sobs, hiccuped, and shuddered. He was not sure of it. She had forgotten everything once again. Patiently, Tristan Mallory stroked her hair and repeated, "Why are you crying? What happened?" It took her several minutes to calm down a bit, but eventually she wiped at her tears and answered with a faint voice interrupted by sobs, "I don't know. I think I've lost something important, really important, but I can't remember what it was." Tristan Mallory sighed, feeling a mixture of compassion and pity, always that nagging obsession, that curse. She seemed so lost, so vulnerable. He wanted to hold her so tightly that her sadness would melt away, and at the same time within him a voice was telling him that he shouldn't be too forceful, that he shouldn't take advantage of her weakness. Yeah. Ambre didn't recognize him anymore after all. He had to wait. Even the desire to ease his own loneliness was suffocating. The woman he loved was there just in front of him, and he couldn't do so much as touch her. So he tried to look confident, to look reassuring, yet in front of this sad little girl, he did not feel confident at all. "Are you all alone? Where are Mommy and Daddy?" "I don't know." "Do you live far away from here?" "I don't know." "What's your name?" "Ambre." "Well, Ambre, you can stay here out in the wind, or you can't stay out here in the wind. You're going to catch cold eventually, and you don't want to get sick, do you?" "No, I hate being sick." "So you've got to go warm yourself up somewhere. It'll be night soon." "But I don't know where to go." "In that case, what do you think about going to my place? It's not far away from here, and it'll be a much better place to sleep than this swing." Ambre seemed wary, but she had no other choice but to follow him. He gently reached a hand to her, and for the first time she lifted her eyes. They were washed out, blurry with tears, and hesitant. Those were the eyes of a little girl stuck in a woman's body, the eyes of a woman haunted by her little girl obsession, the eyes of a trapped person. I'm going to save again, even though I suspect that this is coming to an end soon. And again. He thought it a good idea to force a smile to appear reassuring. Even with the fatigue, Tristan Mallory showed the most convincing smile he could and took her hand, so fine, so frail, to help her get to her feet. The young girl's steps were wobbly and weak. She had probably not eaten all day long. Carefully, he led her to his place while making sure she wouldn't trip. The 30-year-old man removed his coat and shut the front door behind them. "Make yourself at home. I'll cook you something." Passing through the kitchen, he turned on the light in the living room so that his flat would look less gloomy. While searching his fridge for a potential meal, he periodically stole several glances over the counter. In the living room, Ambre was still walking around, a bit wild, still on the defensive. She explored this new environment by looking around, admiring the ornaments. Unfortunately, she didn't find much to pique her interest. It was a bland house, almost too bland. There were no clues about the occupants' lives. The pictures of their happy days were carefully hidden, Taking advantage of Tristan being distracted by a packet of noodles, she escaped to the hallway and tried to find the bathroom to relieve an urgent need. She found it quickly enough, and before returning to the hallway, she noticed that all the doors were wide open, except for one. Strangely, before she even had time to think about it, she was drawn to that doorway. Intrigued, Embry felt, magnetically attracted by the straight, slightly open door. Just one peek was all she wanted, but she struggled to see anything through the crack. Was this Bluebeard's cabinet a frightening tomb where Tristan Mallory stored the corpses of his former wives? Very funny game. Former wives, yeah. The little girl pushed the door open, entered the room, and switched the light on. In the kitchen, Tristan sighed. He was cooking Ambre's favorite meal, but his eyes were suddenly itchy. Shoulders down, he noticed his wife's absence. She must have found her room, he mentally grumbled. His hands were mechanically repeating the steps necessary to prepare the meal, but his mind was elsewhere. Little by little, and the music stopped, which is scary. Little by little, he slowed down until he stopped completely. Still as a robot, he let himself fall against the wall. God, what have I done to deserve this? When is she going to come back? When is she going to wake up? His face in his hands, he cried silently in the empty living room. Will my tears reach you one day? Stop crying. I can't. When he felt better, he headed towards the forbidden room and called Ambre playing with stuffed animals. His gaze softened. I suppose that I can't do anything, he thought to reassure himself. Without a word, he went to sit next to her. On the bed, the young woman was moving the stuffed animals' hands while making them speak. In her weak voice, she was narrating a stuffed animal tea party and seemed to be enjoying herself very much. The light was back in her eyes. Suddenly, she got mad at a plump cow and scolded her harshly. It's dirty. Stop it right now. You're making a mess. Hallie, what did I say? It's dirty. You've got to behave yourself. And don't roll on the floor. You shouldn't make a fuss just because you didn't get what you wanted. Ha. Huh, very funny game, very funny. As punishment, she sent the cow in a corner while ordering her not to move and replaced it with a pony with long eyelashes. The stuffed animal tea party hosted by the blue monkey was obviously not going as planned. The man examined the girl's every move with care. She finally noticed his presence. That evening, Tristan Mallory admired little Ambre as she wolfed down her food, half amused, half distracted. Seeing her so happy soothed his heart a little, but at the same time, it was heartbreaking. He remembered the blissful days already long gone, with difficulty, but he still remembered them. He remembered that beautiful young lady, her adorable smile, her cheerfulness, their promises. In front of Ambre's ever-flowing enthusiasm, Tristan Mallory couldn't help but smile faintly, almost pitifully. Yes, that's it, he kept telling himself, as if to reassure himself. All I'm doing is keeping her around until she remembers who she is and what she's lost. Waiting for her to remember if she ever managed to someday. Tristan Mallory could have been an ordinary man with an ordinary life if his daily life hadn't changed dramatically a few years ago due to a dire event. Since that day, he was the victim of an infernal cycle, an ordeal that seemed never-ending. He had been so happy, so fulfilled with the woman he loved, the woman he had married. Ambre, so charming, whom he had sworn his life to. Ambre had gone mad. He had never realized how obsessed she was about having children until the doctor announced to them that she was sterile. An issue that seemed resolvable to him, but to her it was as if she had been dealt the death penalty. They could have put themselves in the hands of science, or just given up on that project altogether to make a new one. They could have been satisfied with their everyday life, but not for her. Ambre wasn't willing to let her little girl dream go to change a coma of the ideal... I'm sorry, guys. To change a coma of the idyllic fairy tale she was promised. It was a need, it had to go that way or that way only. Then the pressure she put on herself had the upper hand. She couldn't be perfect. She couldn't conform herself with exactitude to all those absurd norms imposed to her. Something in her head like a fragile thread broke. She had an emotional breakdown. Right in front of her husband, bewildered eyes, she had dived in one go into a kind of insanity as sudden as it was violent, from which she didn't want to return. Refusing to face reality, she escaped in a long dream, a long nightmare, where she became untouchable. Amber reverted to childhood, where everything was easier, where everything was still possible. She didn't recognize her husband anymore, or didn't want to recognize him. So he had to pretend not to know her each time, tame her each time, until she would have a new breakdown and everything would reset again. He had to try to make her happy and help her get better each time, even if it meant bending to her every will, even if it meant living in a world of pretend, even if it meant unrequited love on his part. During this cycle, once more intrigued, Embry took advantage of his absence to open a drawer she had never touched before. She had found the key in her guardian's room. Inside was a big leather notebook. Convinced she had found a treasure, she grabbed it and opened it. It was a photo album. Spread on the pages were bright smiles and tender gestures. Look, don't you put this through me and then not give me a happy ending, okay? I don't know. Browsing through the pictures, the little girl discovered her guardian, young and dashing, in the arms of a, remember we looked that word up, coquettish young lady, flirty. It means flirty. I remember looking that one up. I'm proud of myself. Dressed soberly and tastefully, she was strolling down the seashore with a shawl on her shoulders, or in a park holding an ice cream. But what caught her eye was a very specific picture that towered in the center of the album. Tristan, wearing a suit, was leading his lover out of a church with clumsy footsteps under a shower of flower petals. She looked so happy, so fulfilled in her large, refined white dress that Ambry was stupefied. All the more so as the bride looked exactly like her. She's so pretty. What are you looking at? Tristan's sudden appearance made her jump, so much that she dropped the forbidden object. The 30-year-old man gaze darkened immediately. You searched the closet to see what my wife looked like, didn't you? She answered in a shaky voice guiltily. Yes, are you going to scold me? Of course not. I just would have preferred that you didn't see it. Why? Why don't you ever talk about her? I want to know. He sighed, appearing upset. I don't want to do this. He sighed, appearing upset as he looked at those begging eyes that he had never been able to resist for long. Reluctantly, he sat down on the couch and told her how he had met the one he thought would be the love of his life, and related all that they had gone through together. Look, just come clean. Tell her straight up. Tell her she cray-cray. Tell her she's crazy. Tell her you love her. Tell her she can't have kids. Don't even go down that path, and that y'all can adopt. You know what? There's lots of kids that need a good home, that don't have a good home. Just adopt. Adopt. You can even adopt a little girl. They don't discriminate. You can get a little girl, a little boy. You can get one of both. Whatever. But you don't. Embry listened with wide-eyed attention. She liked that story very much. Tristan seemed to briefly get younger as he evoked the past, describing how head over heels he had been for her and how happy she had made him. Their peaceful and ordinary everyday life was something the little girl envied, of course. Caught up in the tale, she couldn't help but pressure him. And then what happened? Until the light shining in the man's green eyes brutally vanished. And then she left. Where to? Those eyes, though. Far away to a place where I can't reach her anymore. Every day I pray that she'll somehow hear me, that she'll wake up, that she'll remember me. I don't know if she'll ever emerge from that dream that's keeping her captive. Is she dead? Sometimes it feels like it, but no, she's still alive, just in a different world from mine. If I could have joined her, I would have sacrificed everything for her, and today she's forgotten me forever. That's sad. Tristan sighed again, head down, as a heavy, crushing silence came between them. Could anyone imagine his suffering? Could anyone imagine what it felt like to be in his shoes? To see that your loved one can't even recognize you anymore, that she had forgot everything about you, about your relationship. When Ambry, the little girl stuck in a woman's body, asked him why he was crying, he wanted to scream. Because I love you, because we were so happy together, because I can't live without you, because I need your presence, your affection, because I'm all alone, because you're my wife, the woman I love. I beg of you, come back to me, get a hold of yourself and snap out of it. But it was useless. He had already tried to shake her, to talk to her like she was his wife. But if he did, she would remain terrified. She would move away from him. She would cry, telling him he shouldn't hurt her. So he gave up. He stopped trying to get his role back. He kept pretending and suffering. And his suffering got worse day after day, like a sly disease trying to consume him further. Fake a smile. Forget about yourself. Don't think about anything other than reassuring her. How could he go on like that without being worn out? Tristan Mallory was no Superman. He was often on the verge of losing it. He despaired to see no progress, even no hope for healing. Would Ambry ever return to normal? He didn't believe that anymore. He'd become too disillusioned. One evening, when he was feeling especially worked up, he dared to yell at the young lady who was doing her best to please him. He immediately regretted it, but the deed was done. Ambry's voice trembled dangerously. While getting close, he noticed her hands were shaking. I'm sorry, like my eyes are crossing. Frenetically. Yeah, that's the word. Completely. Eyes wide open, soaked in tears, she exploded. I'm sorry, I just want you to love me. I want you to look at me. Why do you only look through me? Am I not good enough? Is that it? I will never be as good as she was, will I? But Ambry, who are you talking about? Dumbfounded, Tristan held her in his arms as tightly as he could. No, he truly couldn't understand. He couldn't understand such intense and sudden sobs. He only loved one person in this world, only one. How could she believe for a second that she had been beaten by someone else? Reassured by his gesture, Ambry wanted to explain herself. Your wife. I can see that her departure left you very sad. I wanted to bring a smile back to your face. I wanted to take her place so you'd forget about her. For a split second, Tristan Mallory was breathless. It was surreal. He would have pinched himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming, but no, the pain in his chest was far too real, too pitifully carved in him. Ambry, locked up in her little girl's dream, was becoming jealous of herself, and she was trying to surpass her happy alter ego of the past. She was trying to destroy herself from her husband's memories as if to rewrite the past, like some kind of unconscious suicide. How could he answer such a declaration? How could he find the right words? Catching his breath with difficulty, the 30-year-old man took Ambry by the shoulders and looked in her eyes for a long time. He had to wake her up. He had to make her realize. He had to think of a way to tell her. After a brief sigh, he affirmed, Listen, I will never be able to forget my wife, all right? It's impossible. But that doesn't mean I don't want you. It's the exact opposite, actually. You're very dear to me, Ambry. You hear me? I need you. You already have her place. So please stop crying. Don't make it even harder than it is for me. The young girl shyly dried her tears, and her features changed to an adorably naive expression. She looked sincerely despaired. You're still okay with me? What made you think I'd abandon you, huh? Nothing, it's just that you seem to love her so much, I'm a bit jealous. Why is that? I don't know. When I look at those pictures, I can't help but tell myself I must absolutely make you happy. I think I love you, and I'm gonna save again, because, of course. Okay. Tristan felt all the courage and determination he had worked up melting away overnight, and he started sobbing as well. Did she recognize him just a little? Was that a sign from her subconscious? Had she finally got a grip on herself? But I love you too. I've loved you for so long. I love you so much it makes me sick. For real? You're not treating me like a kid? Of course not. Then prove it. What do you mean? Show me you regard me as a true woman, that you really love me. Ambry seemed dead set on it, so Tristan softly kissed her lips. Look, that's her head. You ain't fooling me. That wasn't a kiss on the lips. You fibbed. The warm and pleasurable feeling went to his head. For a few seconds, he felt as if he was holding his wife in his arms, as if she had come back for real. Game, just I know it's called Ambre, a heartbreaking kinetic novel, but you don't gotta do all this. You don't. That delicate skin, which smelt deliciously like vanilla, reminded him of happy days. Long afternoons spent laughing in the sun, peaceful evenings under the light of the stars or by a fire, of a shared umbrella to shelter from the storm. She was here, so close, so far within a finger's reach. He only had to close his eyes and believe in this dream. The illusion smiled faintly at him. At his limit, he embraced her. If you only knew how much I love you. He had so many things he would have wished to tell her, so many that the flood of words blocked his throat and nothing could come out. So for lack of words to make her understand his feelings, he used his body. When dawn's rays of light crept through the window, Ambre was profoundly asleep, lying atop of Tristan's still lukewarm body. And we're back to the beginning of this episode. Yeah. Eyes surrounded by dark circles, the weight of regrets and fatigue that he couldn't get rid of, he stared at her with a sad smile on his face. It was just a dream, wasn't it? When you'll wake up, you'll be a child again, right? The only answer he got was light groaning, softened by such a serene face, he left a kiss on her fresh cheeks. As soon as he did, the sleeping lips spread to form a happy smile. I wonder what you're dreaming about. Say, won't you invite me over there? Tristan Mallory was weary of the infernal cycle that broiled his prayers in a permanent cacophony. Once more, unbeknown to her, he mimicked a fake wedding ceremony, a fake joy, to please her. Never again would the fresh and innocent smile of the pictures return. The masquerade drew out until Ambre started to ask to have children again and discover the truth one way or another, which would invariably make her plunge into madness as her obsession was so strong. To counter these numerous relapses, the 30-year-old man often went to the hospital with his wife to meet with the psychiatrist in charge of her and review possible changes. So Tristan, how's Ambre lately? Has her condition improved a little? Not yet. The doctor frowned compassionately. He had been in charge of the Mallory case for some time now, and he felt particularly powerless in the face of such an impasse with the young lady. He had tried it all, without success. You never know. Is that why you called me, doctor? He grabbed a pen and played with it nervously while staring at Tristan. No, to be honest, I knew Ambre would relapse again. One of my colleagues told me the other day that, allegedly, your wife stopped by the hospital to do the usual dramatic routine. And he callously told her, yeah, you're sterile. Yeah, way to go. Way to go, dude. That's when you say, okay, we need you to just wait here while we do a little and then you call Tristan. You don't just tell her and then leave her. No, bad doctor. Bad. She ran into an intern that didn't really know how. I apologize, doctor. If I would have just read that, then, I apologize. But still. I regularly explained her case to the newbies, but between theory and practice, you know. The poor boy meant well. He told her the truth while trying to sugarcoat it to make her reflect on it. Okay, still, whatever. She had another anxiety attack, which suck. Those suck, obviously. By the time he told her to sit down to call for me, she was already gone. If it had been me, I would have tried to buy you some time. Anyway, what's done is done. There's no need to apologize, doctor. It's not your fault. You know as well as I do that she regularly loses it, and lying to her about it doesn't do any good. The fact remains that I booked today's appointment so that I could check on how you're faring and how she's been since that unfortunate incident with my colleague. Nothing's changed. The doctor sighed. He stuck the pen in his coat pocket and stopped walking. While nervously scratching his beard, he mumbled in an understanding tone, Frankly, I'm impressed. I really don't know how you can keep going like this, Tristan. In your place, I wouldn't be able to. but I still have to make you see a doctor too. We never know. You're not safe from having a breakdown just like her. Totally understand, doctor. You know, every cycle I try to do things a bit differently, but in the end, I'm tired, worn out. I've lost all hope. So all that I can do for her is to make her as happy as possible during that golden time where she's living a perfect childhood. All that's left of the woman I love is a shadow, so I hope she'll eventually find rest. The two men gazed at Ambre, who was in the hospital's hallway in the distance, playing like a little girl. Suddenly Tristan broke the silence, his voice trembling. Sometimes I wonder, is she ever going to get out of that prison she's built around herself to avoid suffering? Is she ever going to accept facing the outside world, or is she going to keep living in an eternal golden dream where everything's perfect? I wish I could promise you that she'll wake up from that long nightmare, but something inside me thinks she will never call her obsessions into question. Which is an immense waste. Because of that, she's forsaken herself from a life that could have been wonderful. Meanwhile, Ambre Mallory was cheerfully having a chat with what she thought to be another little girl of her age. In reality, the young woman was babbling deliriously with dead eyes to her own reflection in the mirror, still stuck in that never-ending dream, free of hardships. You know what? I've got a lover. Yes, for real. I'm even going to marry him soon. And we'll be happy until the end of time and have lots of kids just like in fairy tales. How could it be otherwise? You're right, every day will be a celebration. If only I didn't have that strange feeling. I think I've lost something important, really important. But I can't remember what it was. Okay, achievement unlocked, curtains closed. The end. Okay. So, the end. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was Ambre, a heartbreaking kinetic novel. We got our pictures over there scrolling. Okay, let's see. Thoughts about it. It was a visual novel. There weren't very many choices. In fact, I think there was only like one or two. Were there any choices? It's been a while. I honestly can't remember. So I did kind of guess a lot of what was going to happen. I didn't figure that there would be a happy ending because, there's never happy endings. Especially not whenever heartbreaking kinetic novel is literally in the title. So all in all, I'd say that I did like it. I did enjoy it. I liked the story. It was very fresh. It was very cute at points, and it was sad. I really feel for Tristan. I get it. I hate to say, because he loves her, Yeah, I was really hoping that there would be like another, but no, I don't think there is. Okay, so that was Ombre. I wish there was a happy ending, but sometimes you don't get happy endings. And I can respect that. They didn't try to do a sudden, and she's all better, which I respect. I understand. Sometimes the story doesn't have a happy ending. And in a way, I think I like it better. It's bittersweet. It sucks, and it'll keep sucking, but sometimes that's what life is. You gotta look for the good. You gotta look for those golden moments in between, the cycle of suck, as depressing as that sounds.